Healthy could be the new sick. Blood levels could be made normal and yet not feel well. So many people are having that exact experience because it's not so simple.
How does someone know the recipe that made them sick? Because if you know that, maybe you can undo it.
So my saying is, if we fix the cell, we get well. A lot of people today are trying to solve their gut problem when they're in a mold problem or they have an upstream heavy metal issue. When your cells make energy in the mitochondria, which is in our cells, they make toxins. If you understood the microbiome, that means all the bacteria that are on our hands that protect us. If it wasn't there, we'd be dead. Detox is about fixing what's broken there.
And it's in the cell, not the liver, not the kidney. How do you go about fixing the cell?
I have my 5 Rs, which is a roadmap to do this.
You're listening to The Human Upgrade with Dave Asprey.
So, Dr. Dan Pompa, you said that a lot of disease, a lot of aging is damage at the cellular level. And I think we have some agreement on that. Mm-hmm. Is healthy the new sick?
Is healthy the new sick? Well, when you look at the statistics in this country, you might say that, actually.
Yeah.
I've never heard it put that way, but it's actually a brilliant statement because healthy could be the new sick. And here, especially because it becomes so normal to them, a lower level of living.
Yeah.
It's kind of like someone dimming the lights outside the room. After a while, you don't even know it's dim until they actually turn it up.
You're like, I'm healthy.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, you're not.
No, you're not. No,
okay.
It's true. I was in a conversation just recently. I was in a friend of mine's waiting room, and it was 3 women were having a conversation, and it was about their health issues, but they kept saying, but that's normal, right? It's like, well, my thyroid, I have thyroids, issues, my hair's thinning, but that's all normal. And I was like thinking, and I actually didn't go into the conversation because I knew it would just be too much.
And if you look at what normal actually means, it means average. And just go to the airport and look around, and that's normal. So if what you are is normal, you're probably not in very good shape because most people are sick today. So you should be so far from normal just to be healthy. Right?
Even blood work. You look at blood work and, these normals that we call them are really not normal, are they?
Not
They're based on abnormal humans in an abnormal society.
What is the normal level of testosterone for a 35-year-old guy?
My answer is going to be a little different than probably what you're looking for, because we look at blood levels of hormones, and I always say, if it were only that simple, meaning that how your hormones interact with your cell, get into your cell so you feel well, is really different than people think, meaning hormone sensitivity, it rules.
Okay.
So therefore, you could have someone with a lower blood level and be absolutely healthy, as we're putting quotes around it, and feel amazing and be lean and have all kinds of energy because their cells are very sensitive to the hormones. Or people could be forcing the hormones very high and their cells not be very sensitive to the hormones because of something called cellular inflammation that's blocking the hormones and cellular damage to the receptor itself. So it's hard to look at blood levels and put healthy on them.
That's profound. You're 100% right. And the first thing is people say, how much testosterone? I'm like, well, how much is free? Or how much is available?
See, it's not easy.
Yeah. And we can measure how much is free. And, Randy Galpin was on and he said, above 20. And I would generally agree. And some people do not feel good at 20 because, as you're saying, their cells can't use it. So then you say, well, what's the right level for longevity? And then how are you feeling? And maybe we need to crank it up to 24 so you can feel
Absolutely. Yeah, look at thyroid, right?
Oh, God.
We have this explosion of thyroid cases in the last even 10 years. If you look at 20, it's even worse, right? Well, look, people... Let me reference myself. There was a time where I said, I know I have a thyroid. This is when I was sick. This is back in 1999, 2000, so a long time ago. But my hair was thinning, right? I didn't know what was wrong with myself. I had a mysterious illness, couldn't figure it out. But one thing I did know is I had a thyroid issue. I had all the symptoms, right?
And you knew that because you were a doctor back then.
Yeah. And I knew it was going, but I went and got a blood test. this particular day, I ran $5,000 worth of tests trying to figure out what was wrong. Okay. And I know the number, right? It was right around that number because I didn't have insurance to pay for it. So, you tend to remember things like that.
I spent similar amounts in a similar year because, it was really expensive. Still is, but not.
No doubt it was back then. But I ran a lot of things, but it was a depressing day because he came back and his exact words were, "Oh, you're healthier than me," right? I didn't want to hear that. I mean, if he told me, you have cancer, I'd be like, okay, at least I know what I'm up against now because I've just spent, 2 years looking and finding nothing. But anyways, my thyroid numbers came back normal. Okay. I had every thyroid symptom. Right. So what I didn't know is, again, my thyroid hormone wasn't getting its message or itself in the cell. So therefore, because I had so much cellular inflammation.
Thyroid resistance. Basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like insulin resistance. Great example. So eventually, I maybe 5 years it would have went off, maybe 10 years I would have went, and finally they would have said, "Oh, your number, your TSH is off, your T3, is low." And then great, here, take this. I would have taken the hormone. Maybe I would have felt better for a period of time. I would have definitely went back in 2-3 months and they would say, "Oh, look, your levels are better." But what do people say? "Yeah, but I don't feel better." Right? Meaning my hair's still thinning, my skin's dry, I'm constipated, so I still have no energy. I can't lose this belly fat or whatever it is, right? The point is that, that's the example that we're talking about is blood levels can be made normal and yet not feel well in so many people are having that exact experience because it's not so simple as looking at blood levels. And I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, if someone comes back and they have a testosterone level of 100, I too would say probably an indication your body's struggling a bit.
But if they walked in just with plates of muscle and complaining of excess libido and their testosterone's 100, you'd probably say, good on you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not going to happen, but
probably not.
It's funny. Around that same year, probably a couple years before it, I got my results back from a longevity doctor in the Bay Area. And I don't think he's still practicing, Dr. Miller. And he said, "Dave, your thyroid's almost undetectable and your testosterone's lower than your mom."
How do you know my mother?
Well, I sent my parents to him because he's a longevity doctor. And I'm like, maybe he can fix me because I'm fat, I'm tired all the time, my eyebrows are falling out, all this stuff, right? And I remember the first time I took thyroid hormone, it was like, oh my God, my whole body. I'm like, now when I apply effort, results happen. Before I could apply effort and nothing would happen.
Right? See, that's the difference. Your cellular health is better now. Look, receptors to every hormone reside on our cells, right? It's people are listening. So I literally have my fist with a hand up, my fingers going through it. Hormones have to dock to those receptors. No different than your cell phone needs a tower to communicate. Otherwise your cell phone's useless. Right. And what you just said, when you were going through your health challenges, we both went through stuff, right? Yeah. Nothing worked. Because your cells were inflamed, blocking your hormone receptors. Oh, you can't even get the good things in. Oh, and also toxins are building up in your cell, right? Which is not triggering your bad genes, right? It's like, and this is most of America, by the way, toxic cells, right? It's like hormones can't get in, nutrition can't get in, toxins can't get out. This is the problem, right? Right there. 20 years of teaching this to doctors with, great frustration sometimes.
Well, I think you're making a difference though.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And likewise, I'm honored to be here. And by the way, I really, not as many people give you credit is due, meaning you are the father of biohacking. You really are. And I say that because I've been doing this a long time. I've been ripped off, copied, and not given credit. So number one, I know what it feels like, but I learned to give credit where credit's due. You are. I remember years ago, I could tell you where I was when someone either said, "Watch this, you'll resonate with it." And I watched a video. I texted the person back, said, "This guy's smart. And he knows what he's talking about." And anyways, but that was, my gosh, I don't even know when that was, but I was in Tahoe. I was staying at this cool hotel in Tahoe. Actually, it was Carson's, right outside of Tahoe. But that you deserve credit, man.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Yeah. No.
I really did start the biohacking movement.
You did
consciously to make longevity medicine, functional medicine, and some of this other neuroscience and things, just to make it accessible, so people would want to do it. If someone had told me about biohacking when I was 19, I would have suffered a lot less and saved $2 million. Like it would have been worth it.
Yeah, right. I mean, isn't it true?
Yeah.
Because I spent it, man. We remortgaged our home.
Just to get well, right?
Yeah, just to get well. That's why I don't have a lot of patience for people when they say, well, how much is it? Or I can't afford it? Or can you give me a guarantee? Because I'm like, I wish I had all those things, right? I didn't. And I spent it. And if I thought you had the answer, I'm doing it. I'll find it.
I was briefly married in my 20s, and I just realized I need to set aside 20% of my income just to function, to figure out what's wrong with my body, to keep my energy where it is, right? And that was one of the relationship stresses. Like, why do you spend so much money on, medical tests? Like, because I'm fat and because I'm tired, because I can't think, and because I keep getting sick and all these things, because my body hurts all the time.
I had that, I think in that piece that I saw, you told a bit of your story. I'm not going to do this, but I'd love to reverse this and be like, tell your story to me again. I would love, when did all that start? But just quickly, when did your illnesses start?
They started as a child.
Oh, did they?
I grew up in a basement with toxic mold.
Oh, dude, I hate mold, man. Mold's evil.
My family owned a gold mine. I might have had a little bit of mercury exposure from that. I used to play in old mines as a kid.
Absolutely, you did.
And then a vampire bat bit me when I was 10. I woke up with it feeding on my neck.
Oh, that's interesting.
Now I understand. I almost certainly got Bartonella from it. And I also had chronic strep throat from the mold, which gives you the pandas. And so I also had Asperger's and ADHD and ODD.
Well, that makes you brilliant. Okay, so take that off the table. But, I have to say what you just said is part of what I've been teaching for 20 years is always look for the perfect storm.
Yeah.
Meaning it's never one thing.
Never.
Your body will adapt, right? But it's when that other storm, 3 storms come together and we have a perfect storm, and boom, then the genes start getting triggered and the bottom starts falling out and the immune system turns on itself. So if you can figure out what someone's perfect storm is, that's how they're going to get well.
I love the way you teach this, because you're teaching doctors systems biology and you're undoing the damage from medical school. And there's great value in medical school. I'm not saying that it's not there. If I get hit by a truck, I want to go to visit people.
The best,
right.
Yeah.
It's just that belief there must be one cause is built into the pharmaceutical industry and their funding medical schools. And what if, in order to test for bread, you could have Pfizer and like, well, we baked the water, we baked the yeast, we baked the salt, we baked the flour. There is no bread. Now, you have to have a recipe, right? And there's a recipe for getting sick and a recipe for getting well. Absolutely. How does someone know the recipe that made them sick? Because if you know that, maybe you can undo it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, exactly right. But it's funny. What you said, though, doctors believe that there's one cause. Today, they believe there's probably one drug to cover up one symptom, right? I mean, it's gotten even worse than that, right? One of the things I love to teach from, just as an analogy, is if you, to the point of what you said, right? If you can figure out the cause, then surely the solution lies there, right? And we're always looking for cause. But think of a 3-legged stool. All 3 things have to be there for the stool to stand up, is the analogy, right? Okay, we know that genes play a role, right? But again, our DNA is not our destiny, right? Genes can get turned on, most genes, and they can also be turned off. So think of that as one leg of the stool, right? But then think of another leg as the stressors, that perfect storm we discussed, that triggers that gene, right? So, okay, so if we deal with the stressors, do you think that there's science to show that we can actually turn off the genes? The answer is yes. So people listening that have autoimmune, right? They have thyroid conditions, diabetes, all these things. Yes, those genes were turned on, but it's definitely not your destiny. But you won't turn them off until you deal with the stressors that turn them on. There is one more leg, and that's the microbiome, as we've learned, right? Meaning that if you think about autoimmune, there's certain bacteria, if they get in too low a number, we don't make enough T regulatory cells that tell your immune system to back down. It's okay, right? Don't attack it. Don't attack yourself. So, of course, that's playing a role too. So today, even in functional medicine, I find doctors are either just trying to chase the gut without understanding these other legs of the stool. So if all 3 of these things had to be there for you to get sick, then it makes logical sense that we better deal with all 3. Yes, the gut, and yes, do things that can actually turn down and downregulate gene expression, but also you better get to the cause of how it got triggered. Oh, in these stressors are also why the gut went bad too.
Right.
See, there's one leg that actually causes the other legs, to fall, if you will. So
I really like that. And you've been a leading voice in talking about the role of toxins. And I recognize in my history, both toxins developed by my microbiome that was off, as well as environmental toxins have had a profound impact, and even toxins from things that people think are healthy food, but probably aren't.
It's true.
Those have been why my mitochondria were screwed up, why I had the inflammation and all. So I want you to rank the toxins people are commonly exposed to from the worst and most common going down the list.
The most common and the worst. I don't know if it lines up, but let's go for this. Because if you look at probably the most common, like look at plastic exposure today, right? Yeah. I mean, huge. They're finding it in every tissue of the human body. Every brain now on autopsies has it, right? Every testicle. I mean, come on. These are hormone disruptors, right? It's like obviously linked to cancer and many other conditions. And we know they're driving autoimmune and other problems. And yet, even you and I are being exposed. And I bring water, glass bottles. I don't drink out of plastic, right?
Did you notice glass bottle?
Of course, yeah. It's funny how many podcasts they give me a bottle and I'm preaching against it and there's the bottle and I'm like, okay, great. Now I can at least use this. 1 liter of bottle has 140,000 micrograms of plastic. But anyway, so plastic's probably one of the most common. If we're going common first, then of course chemicals from our food like glyphosate. I mean, my gosh. I would argue that's making this perfect storm even worse, right? So I'm going to talk about some deadly toxins that people unknowingly have been exposed to from birth on, like you and I. And yet glyphosate allows those to cross deeper into our brain. Number one, this is a 2012 study. Stephanie Seneff, was one of the first. It's been duplicated.
She's great. She's on the show. I think she has more credit than she gets.
Yeah, right? Yeah. It's true. Yes, it allows these toxins like heavy metals, which are deadly. They affected me, part of my story, to cross even deeper into the brain. She believes that it's, creating this massive increase in autism and a lot of other neurodegenerative conditions. It's opening up the gut barrier. So I would put that in one of the most deadly categories because in it itself it's deadly, and then it's also making other toxins more deadly by allowing it to cross deeper into us. So that would be deadly. I think deadly that people miss in, I would say, alternative medicine misses for many reasons because of bad testing, and they don't know what to do with it really. Mold biotoxins, right? Okay, so the urine test, listen, in my doctor group, we tested this urine test where you look at biotoxins. Most of it's foodborne. We fasted people for a day, got a little better. 2 days got even better, but showing that it's mostly foodborne, and a lot about foodborne mold. Now, that's why you developed coffee that's not, right?
Right.
So it's very inaccurate. So mold is either missed because of poor testing, right? People go, oh, I don't have mold in my house. No one thinks they have mold in their house, right? It's like, or they do an air test because they brought in the experts. And of course, there's no mold in the house, but it is because it's behind the wall and they didn't test for it. Heavy metals, I would say a lot of people think they might have heavy metals, but then the problem here is the way that they go online and find what they think gets rid of heavy metals. It's the drops, it's the chlorella, the cilantro, none of it is, if it were only that easy, right? I wouldn't have spent most of my career teaching how to get rid of this stuff out of deep tissue like your brain, that made me sick. So heavy metals, deadly, and doctors don't know quite what to do with it. Biotoxins, deadly because it's missed and oftentimes dealt with incorrectly. Pesticides, big problem. Plastics, big problem. Forever chemicals is a new problem, right? Yeah. Because these things, forever. They last forever in our environment, but look what they're doing in our body, right? I mean, it's remarkable that how much damage it's caused, how many dollars are awarded to the damages of, and yet we're still, basically getting it in all these products. from dental floss to eye care, toilet paper. I mean, just go down the list. Eye drops, obviously clothing, waterproof resistant, of course, pans, Teflon. I mean, over 10,000 products we're being exposed to. Europe is putting bans on this stuff one after another. Denmark, the EU is, next to put bans on this stuff. Here in the United States, we haven't even banned glyphosate yet. And how many billions have been awarded to cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and, other problems. And yet you still walk in Home Depot and you see what? Roundup, right?
And, those bastards are now trying to go to states and make it illegal for them to have liability for spraying chemicals that poison people. And I don't understand that, because there's a certain type of person, and thankfully I'm not one of them, where if you kill their children, they will kill you. Right. And so I don't understand how our government isn't taking action on that. I think they might. But
there's a chance right now.
Yeah.
There's a new sheriff in town. There's a chance that this can all, change. I hope it does.
And one of the things about glyphosate that isn't well known is that glyphosate, when you spray it on soil and plants, it causes the toxic mold to make 500 times more mold toxin. And in things like corn, we used to just have mold on the corn. I mean, it's called Fusarium, and it's one of the big toxic molds. Well, you could see it, but when you spray glyphosate, it goes into the roots of the corn, and it binds to the sugar in the corn, and you can't see it. And if you test the corn for this toxin, you won't see it. But once you digest the corn and your enzymes break the sugar apart, the toxin's released. And so glyphosate is making mold toxins work, and it's making metal toxins work.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely does. You know something I heard you say recently, and I said, wow, he's the first person that I've heard say this, and it's true, that when people are in a mold exposure, oftentimes they get like mucus biofilms, and they have certain sinus problems that they have, even certain mucus in the back of the throat.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, that's mold. And the reason is the fact is the bacteria and mold are enemies of each other.
Yeah, ancient enemies.
Absolutely. So what do bacteria do to protect themselves? They film biofilms, right? So that is a sign that I've talked about for many years. So I don't know how you figured it out, but or where you got that, but it's true. But I rarely hear people talk about that.
It's fundamentally important for parents, right? Because your kids have behavioral problems, and pandas is what happens when toxic mold messes with the streptococcus bacteria, and it makes it form a biofilm in the sinus of your kids, and then they get chronic strep throat the way I did. Antibiotics every month for 15 years. But the toxins from strep cause an autoimmune reaction. I think it's probably to the lining of your nerves, to myelin, but that's what causes this pandas disorder, which makes you have OCD and ODD, both of which I used to have. Yeah. So you think, my kid's not trying hard, or they have autism or whatever. They might just have mold toxins, or they might have mold toxins that cause bacterial toxins. Absolutely. And it's so real.
Absolutely, because the mold will obviously have the opposite effect, right? It will cause bacterial problems, just like, it's amazing. But see, the reason you know that is because you experienced it.
Yeah, I did.
Right? The reason I know that is because I experienced it, right? Meaning, like, I had these, impossible biofilms, right? A lot of people today are trying to solve their gut problem when, again, they're in a mold problem, or they have an upstream heavy metal issue.
Makes me so happy you're saying this.
So
it's
doctor. And they're going, all these, probiotic, this, that, other thing. It's like, hold on, what's 20 miles up the river? There might be a factory, dumping a toxin in the river, and that's why your fish are dying down here. So stop trying to populate the fish. In other words, the microbiome. It's not going to happen until you deal with what's going on up there. But, doctors don't want to hear it. We have more fancy testing, right? Whether it's SNP testing, genetic testing, microbiome testing. But yet I feel like alternative medicine is pulling away from that in a sense and getting fancier instead of like dealing with the upstream issues. We got our lives back because we got to the cause.
We're incredibly fortunate, and it took an enormous amount of money and learning. And
that's why we're here.
Yeah, when we're both able to educate. And I think you have so much leverage because you're teaching doctors how to detox in a way that's functional. And so, I practice gratitude for all the shit I went through because it motivated me. My blog, I thought 5 people read this and not go through all the hell I went through, and that was my goal.
Dave, look at the amount of people you've been able to impact, right?
Yeah.
And it would have never happened if you hadn't suffered.
Oh, yeah.
So from pain to purpose has been my whole life story, man. I sit here because of that. And I like to say pain to purpose to promise, meaning I always believe God has a promise in it for someone that if you anchor to it, it's like, watch what can happen. Watch what he does.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
All right, let's start at the top. How do I get rid of toxins in my sinuses?
Well, let's say this. How do you get rid of toxins in your brain, sinuses, body, right? Well, no doubt there's detox pathways that we all were born with. They start in our cell. They eventually have to work their way to the liver, kidneys, gut, etc. But it all starts here. Okay. So if you've heard me say real detox is at the cell. It's a cellular issue.
So agree.
So we can't just say, I'm going to get rid of these toxins using chelators, binders. That's part of it. I teach it. However, if we don't fix what's broken here, then we're never going to fix what's the problem. So meaning, if your cell's detox pathways start to slow down, now you're broken from the very beginning and you will never get well. So my saying is, if we fix the cell, we get well. But let me give people an analogy they can hold on to. So there's many different detox pathways that our cells utilize to get rid of toxins. And by the way, when your cells make energy in the mitochondria, which is in our cells, they make toxins. It's like burning wood in a fireplace.
Yeah.
Right?
Reactive oxygen species.
Absolutely.
It's a fireplace.
If we don't have the damper open, meaning the toxins can't get out and they come into the home, we die. Right? Okay. So everyone has that analogy. Okay. Here's one more. We know to make a car more powerful, faster, right? Perform better. People put dual exhausts on them.
Yep.
And immediately the power goes up. Okay, that means that if we can get rid of toxins, we actually increase power. Okay, now let's do the opposite. This is a true story.
I did that to my Tesla and nothing happened.
Yeah, that's really weird.
I don't have a Tesla. I never owned an electric car.
That's fun. Good thing. They might bomb it outside. Yeah, Who knows what's going to happen these days. But anyway, so now if this is a true story, let me tell the story. So we were in high school and I drove my friends somewhere. I think it was a party, and I was the designated driver. And we got in the car to drive home, and I'm driving home, and the power's dying, and I'm dying. And at this point, I have it floored. Literally, I accelerated the gun. I'm criticizing my friends how heavy they are. I'm like, literally, I wasn't processing. Finally, it gets so bad the car just dies. The next scene was me calling my parents to come pick us up. Okay. Right. The next day, we found out what happened. Someone who didn't like one of us stuffed an apple in the exhaust. Right. An apple. Okay. So what happened? The toxins were building up in the engine, and the engine's power was getting less and less. Sound familiar, America? Right? Your power is getting
banana thing from that movie.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Okay. But anyways, until the point where the engine, died, right? But that's what's happening in people's cells. When these detox pathways slowed down, you'd be dead if they were, if they just stopped, but slow down, the toxins are now building up in the cell. And just like the engine, first sign is just low power. Gosh, I just feel I can't make it through a day. I feel like, but you feel like you're going to just go kaput, and that can happen. But as those toxins build up in the cell, a lot of things happen. Your detox pathways, they get worse and worse. Your DNA that's in that cell as well starts to get triggered. Toxins, as we said, turn on the bad genes. So now you get the diagnosis. It's a thyroid condition. It's whatever it is, right? They start turning it on. But also more as the energy drops. So now energy's dropping. Inflammation is rising.
Right.
And all your methylation pathways are exhausted. Your glutathione pathways, and your hormones don't work even if you're taking them, just like us. Yeah. Detox is about fixing what's broken there.
And it's in the cell, not the liver, not the kidneys.
That's right.
Okay. And not even the sweat glands.
Yeah, no, exactly. And listen, I'm all for saunas. I have one. I love them just as you do. Yep. I'm all for keeping the liver open. Part of my process is you have to keep the liver and the kidney and the gut open. But the big part of what I've been teaching for 20 years is fixing this. And I'm pointing at the cell.
How do you go about fixing the cell?
Okay, I have my 5 Rs which is a roadmap to do this, right? I don't want to bore people with the deep science.
Bore them.
Your audience is pretty privy here. So, but the 5 Rs came about, let me tell that story first, out of a very frustrating lecture that I gave in California. I was so jazzed talking about this, what I just said, basically, right? I probably didn't have as good analogies then, but I was super excited, but I could tell they weren't, my audience. You've spoken enough, you know when you have them, when you don't. I didn't have them. So beating myself up on the flight home, literally, I was like, gosh, I just need to figure out a way to communicate. And then I prayed. I literally I said a prayer, and I'm telling you, it started coming. And I reached down and grabbed my notebook, and the 5 Rs was born. Okay, so what are they? R number 1, it's the obvious. You have to remove the source. We just talked about this. What's upstream? What's up the river, right? Or the sources in your life. You think you're going to get well if you're still living in a moldy home. You could do all your biohacks and all my techniques. Yeah, you're going to chase it. Some things might feel a little better.
Get rid of the mold, get rid of the peanut butter, get rid of the moldy coffee, all the normal sources. Yeah,
absolutely. You have to clean it up. R number 1. R number 2 is you have to regenerate the cell membranes. Now, I do whole weekend seminars just on membranes. It's not my saying, but there is one. Life and death begins on the membranes.
Is that Gilbert Ling?
Is that Gilbert Ling?
I would guess.
Oh, I didn't.
Seems like something from Cells Gels.
Yeah. I got to figure that out now because I wanted to give credit to someone. I always just make sure that people don't think it's me.
Got it.
Here we're back to that credit due thing. It's not me.
We do our best. Right?
Because I heard someone say one time, oh, well, Pompa, I'm like, oh, no, I didn't say that. Fixed cell, get well, that's me. That life and death begins on the membranes, not me, but it does. It's that important, right? I mean, I've already made the point that your hormone receptors are on those membranes, right? So hormone health begins on the membranes. Your ability to lose weight or not lose weight could be on the membranes. And by the way, it's not just the membrane of the outer cell. That is a lipid bilayer, 2 layers of really important fat that is the gatekeeper of what comes in and what comes out. I already said how important that is, right? But those inner membranes, the mitochondrial membrane.
That's where power happens.
That's it. That's where power happens, right? It's like without that, and you know how many people have so many toxins in their cell that their mitochondrial membrane, again, they're taking all these things, wonder why it's not working, wonder why their energy is horrible, it sucks. It's the mitochondrial membrane that is a problem.
So you're doing phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine, and...
Phosphatidylcholine is very important because it makes up such an important part of the membrane. This is such a great topic. So we're on R2, but we're going to stay here for a bit because this is such an important topic. Right now in our space, omega-6 is such a bad guy. And I understand why. Because that's right. Because people are ingesting so much, all the vegetable oils, all the grain-fed meats, right? So we have a dominance of that. I get it. But here's the problem. Omega-6 is the king of the cell membrane. It's the most important. But by the way, because of that, it's why it's so deadly when it's rancid omega-6, right? So adulterated omega-6 is so bad because omega-6 is so important. So my point is that when I teach fixing the membrane, my attention is at the omega-6, getting rid of the bad and bringing in the good. And that's what people don't understand. It's not the bad guy, right? So
you're giving people extra, but undamaged omega-6 to flush out the fat in their membranes.
So when people are eating all these rancid seed oils, those omega-6s are going right to the membrane, and they don't stay for hours. They don't stay for days. They're in there for months.
792 days or something.
That's the last estimate, right?
Yeah, I found the study for that in one of my books.
Yeah, so that's driving cellular inflammation, which disrupts your hormones, which disrupts your nutrition and all your expensive supplements from getting its hormones in the cell. So stay away from seed oils. And again, when you go to a seed oil could be healthy, by the way.
In low doses,
and unadulterated, and that's the issue is people are, everything in Whole Foods or a health food store, if it's in a package, it's very fragile. It's an adulterated oil. So telling people randomly stay away from seed oils, I get that, but it's a little more complicated.
If they're eating egg yolks, eating some avocados, are they not getting undamaged omega-6 is enough?
See, here's the way I answer this. I love vegetable oil in vegetables.
There you go.
This is controversial too. I love fish oil in fish. Fish oil is more fragile than seed oils. It's double bonds. Think about this. Fish oil has five. That's right. Fish oil has 5 to 6 double bonds. DHA, what it has 6. I think the other one has 5. EPA has 5. 2 or 3 is seed oils, right? Now, what fats take heat the best?
Saturated fat and stearic.
How many double bonds do they have?
It's
0.
Kind of weird. They don't have any.
Yeah,
and they're fully saturated with oxygen, so they're very hard to damage.
That's right.
It's most of what I eat.
Yeah. So again, the more double bonds, the more fragile. So we have to be careful of our fats, obviously. And like I said, the omega-6 is very important. Phosphatidylcholine is 70% omega-6.
If I'm in replacing my cell membranes detox mode, which is going to take at least 2 years to replace half your cell membranes, what percentage of my fat should be undamaged omega-6?
Well, yeah, listen, anywhere from a 1-to-1 to some say 6-to-1 ratios is what you see in nature, right?
Yeah.
So think of it as in those ratios. And again, if you're eating, to your point, egg yolks, right, grass-fed meat, you're going to find those ratios are in nature. Why? Because it knows best.
The thing is, though, in grass-fed beef, it's 1.6% linoleic acid. There's a lot of linolenic acid, which is different, but the linoleic, it's pretty low, and I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But I do find that after 15 years of not eating processed seed oils at all, and I don't eat a lot of nuts because of oxalate and all that, but I still get some, that my ratio dropped to about 2.8 to 1 of omega-6 to omega-3, which is too low. For longevity, we want it to be 4. So then I eat a few walnuts or some other things like that are not roasted. And how far can that omega-6 to omega-3 ratio go before it becomes like you need more omega-6?
Yeah, it's to your point, actually, which would be shocking to people, is that when you get that low, you actually start driving inflammatory processes?
Absolutely. When I saw the labs, I'm like, damn it.
Yeah.
So I went out and, I got some walnut oil.
Again, you mentioned, you glossed over. You could read studies on the 1-to-1 ratio is good for the heart. The 2-to-1 ratio is good for your kidneys. The 4-to-1 ratio is a ratio that we target for the cell membrane. That's not my research. That's some very smart people. This guy, he was a Japanese scientist. One of the first studies that I've read, Yoshi, I think his name is, but it was that 4-to-1 ratio is magic around the membrane. So that means it's good for this brain too.
Yes.
Right. And so I think targeting that is wise if you're trying to get your health back.
Olive oil.
Mono. One double bond.
Right. So I've had...
Meaning more stable.
It's definitely more stable, but it still can oxidize because...
Sure, yeah. People put it on their stove.
Yeah.
But the point is, because there's a double bond, right? So we're, butter, ghee, tallow, no double bond. You could put it on your stove. You could fry in it, for goodness sakes. There is a double bond with olive oil, so you do have to be careful. Obviously it can happen.
You might know the answer to this. You're one of the few guys I could ask. I know that 30 to 50 grams of olive oil, if it's real olive oil, has health benefits, and there's really clear stuff. As I've always said,
of course,
a couple tablespoons a day, that's fine. But excessive oleic acid causes a massive increase in oxidation of omega-6, of linoleic acid, by driving something called D5D. So how much olive oil is too much? And should I eat only olive oil the way some people are these days?
I don't think you should only eat olive oil.
I don't think it's good longevity practice.
Yeah, I don't either. I think the question is more complicated than our brains, want to think about it, because there's other protectors in that. Meaning if in a laboratory you're watching that oxidation, in reality, there's other protective factors that can. So it literally, maybe there's one. I don't think there is, but you'd have to study, olive oil in its effect specifically in that area, with taking all other factors out. So that's a little hard.
It is hard. And I kind of roll my eyes at this point. Like, oh, it has all these protective antioxidants. I take hydroxytyrosol in a capsule that's like 1,000 liters of olive oil in every pill. So if you really want the antioxidants from olives, you can get olive polyphenols, and they work much better than overdriving oleic acid, because I would rather have clean, undamaged omega-6 in small amounts and mostly saturated, because I want my membranes to work. But I might be missing something. Like, what am I missing? You're an expert at this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's where, here's where your and I's personality can get us, right? Because we love to do it, and we do it the best, and we can overdo it. So I think that when you're eating a balanced diet and not chugging a bunch of olive oil, that's when you get into trouble, right? Yeah. I mean, listen, people did it with coconut oil, not just, people did it with, I mean, everything can work. My gosh, we can drink too much water, and I see people doing that, right? I mean, so everything can backfire on us, right? So, if you're eating olive oil and you're using it in your food, it's different if you start chugging a lot of olive oil, right? I mean, again, too many antioxidants is bad. It's bad for your immune system.
Yes.
Right? It's like, and then we also know that oxidants can actually be good. Ozone, right? I mean, how most things work. You're the biohacking expert. Yep. Most biohacks work on a premise called hormesis, meaning it literally drives a reaction in our body, and our bodies drive an opposite reaction to adapt to the stress that it created. And that adaptation, if you adapt, becomes a good thing. When you go into a cold plunge, your body literally thinks it's going to die. It raises norepinephrine, and growth hormone. But if you stay in too long, inflammation. You don't sleep as well, because that's the premise of hormesis. If you adapt, it's amazing. If you don't, it's bad. Exercise. You can exercise too much, right? If you exercise too much, you don't adapt, a good thing becomes negative.
Okay. Totally agree with you. So we're going to replace the fat in our membranes with unpoisoned fat, because mold toxins and endocrine disruptors dissolve into your cell membranes. So I like this picture of, if you have like a glass of water with a drop of food coloring in it, you have to add a lot of water before you wash all that out, and fats are the same way. So it's going to take you 4 years to get 75% of that dye out if you just pour new fats into the system. And I've noticed over the years, people who start putting butter and MCT into their coffee every day, the way I did when I was at Bulletproof. Now, Danger Coffee is my new one, because who knows what you might do. For the first few years, you cannot get enough. It's like manna from heaven. Like, I needed this, and almost 2 a day after 2 years, which is when half the cell membranes have been replaced with more stable oils. You've flushed out the system. It's like, I like this, and I do it sometimes, but the craving is gone. It's like the body finally got what it needed.
I've got this.
Okay.
Again, this is learning, working with so many sick children, autistic children. This is opposite of what most people teach. But when I'm teaching membrane, I say the most important thing is you have to bring in the glue, the stabilizers to the membrane first. And those are your saturated fats and cholesterol.
Yes, thank you.
So saturated fat and cholesterol are that's the base layer.
Yeah.
So people go opposite. So before we even think about the omega-6, if you don't stabilize that membrane with those saturates and the cholesterols, the matter of fact, the two fats that are demonized the most is exactly what we need to start with to lay that foundation. So your foundation, when you were like, your body knew, your intuition, your innate intelligence knew it needed the foundation. And then you don't need as much of the foundation. Then you start building on it with the good omega-6 and omega-3 too. We're just talking about that, but those are omega-3 and omega-6 those are your parent oils.
Okay.
I mean, they're essential, meaning you have to get them in your diet, right? So, you can make DHA, EPA, but you have to get those oils in, and they have to have the saturated fats and cholesterol, but that is the foundation.
Okay.
Yeah. So you laid the foundation, and then you acquired less later. Innate intelligence knew it.
Okay. So there's our cell membranes. So we fix those by increasing our intake of saturated and undamaged moderate amounts of polyunsaturated fats and some monounsaturated fats, including phosphatidylcholine and just choline itself, things like from egg yolks, and allowing the liver to make more cholesterol.
And by the way, one of the shakes that I made, I called it my membrane shake. It was filled with egg yolks. And, because again, it brought in that perfect egg yolks. It's like it's almost made for the membrane. It's brilliant. I mean, it's like it's God's food for our cell membrane. So I was literally putting 8 egg yolks in it every day. And, honestly, my hair went amazing. My skin got amazing. But that's a reflection of your cell health, man.
It's so funny. You're reminding me. I haven't thought of this in a while. My first book was a book on fertility, how to have healthier kids. And I invented this recipe. Yeah, my mother of my children was infertile when we met. And it took 5 years to design the nutrition.
Pain to purpose.
To restore fertility so we could have our kids. My kids are teenagers now. Daughter's about to graduate from high school. I'm like, wow. And so we couldn't have kids. And one of the most healing things that I made was this recipe, and I published it as Get Some Ice Cream. And it's called Get Some because it had so many egg yolks, and it had butter and MCT oil and phosphatidylcholine.
That's a membrane shake.
Yeah,
right there.
But we put in an ice cream maker. And when you
it's a
eat
membrane ice cream.
an hour later, you get this thing like, we should go to the bedroom. And I think it's because the body says there's so much abundance, I should get pregnant now. Like, this is a time the nutrients in the world are present.
Yeah.
And thousands of people have emailed and posted saying, I thought you were crazy, but it totally works.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the egg yolks, right?
It is, man. I mean, you can't discount what's the benefits in the whites, not the fats, but the proteins.
Yeah.
My biochemistry teacher, Dr. Shahid, in school, he said, the perfect food is the egg. It's the egg. And back then I'm like, why would now I get it. It's the egg. He's right. It's amazing.
I think, though, you're supposed to cook the whites a little bit because if you take whites by themselves, you get biotin.
Yeah, I use in the shakes, I would just use the yolk, not that, because you could, it's to raise the biotin.
What works even better is you take the egg whites and you feed them to your pigs and then you eat the bacon.
There you go.
That's what I did when I was on the farm. Okay. So we've got our membranes handled. And now our cells, our sensitivity to hormones are there, and we're able to detox the cells.
Yeah, bring good things in, good things out, membranes. Yeah.
What's next on the R's?
R3 is restoring cell energy.
Okay.
This is key.
My favorite.
Yeah, it is your favorite because oftentimes when you're dealing with people who can't digest food, they're sensitive to the world, this is where the biohacks can be beneficial. This is where red light can come in. This is where, because you're going around these things that are so broken, that we're able to biohack into the mitochondria. And it's helpful.
So if you can't digest your food, you should definitely have some alkaline water, right?
Well, I'm not a believer in continually drinking alkaline water. I think it's a big mistake, actually, myself. You're being facetious.
I'm trying to trigger you.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not a believer. I'm not. Yeah.
If you drink alkaline water, you turn off your stomach acid, you can't absorb your food.
Silly, right? And you wonder why pathogens will, feast on you. Yeah. I'm not a believer in alkaline water. Yeah. So.
A little story on that front. A friend runs.
I'm glad we resonate on that. I thought maybe you were, but I'm going to tell you what I feel.
It's sometime around 1996 when I was trying to get better. I bought this $2,000 alkaline water machine from Japan when you couldn't get them in the U.S., like the Kangen and all that. And brother, the Kangen makes perfectly good structured water. Just don't turn on the alkaline setting. But I had this thing, and I drank my alkaline water, and I would find food undigested in my poop. And it took like 6 months to realize it's the stupid alkaline water.
Yeah.
Right. And what a waste of money.
Yeah.
And the CEO of one of the major bottled water companies is a friend. And I was talking about this because one of his products is alkaline. And he's just shaking his head. He goes, it's such bullshit. He goes, but everyone wants to buy it. So if you're listening to the show, run away from alkaline water.
Yeah.
It's bad for you.
Yes. Okay. Your gut's meant to be acid for a reason, right? I mean, it makes no sense. Yeah. It's crazy too, because, when you look at real water, right? It's like, what water is running at these alkaline numbers?
It kills fish. It's stupid.
It's like, this makes no sense, people.
Okay. So we don't do that.
No, don't do that.
So we increase our energy. This is by eating enough calories.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's so many things here that apply, right? But what I want people to understand is that the energy of the cell is everything. There's something called the Gibbs free energy equation. As cellular energy drops, inflammation rises, right? Yeah. And as cellular energy drops in the Gibbs free energy equation, glutathione drops, and then inflammation increases. So the Gibbs free energy, it shows you the relationship of energy to glutathione. Oh, and there's another equation: as glutathione drops, methylation drops. So it's a stress on methylation, right? It's like, look, gene and SNP testing's fun, but really, it's, I didn't have a SNP, and my methylation, I couldn't methylate at all. Stress plays into methylation. This is R5 though, so we're going to get to R5 because it's reestablishing methylation pathways, which are hugely important. But it's not as simple as just, I have the gene. Methylation is important for so many different functions that the body will prioritize it. We'll get to that. But let's figure out, the energy of the cell, if it's not restored, then the problem is it's very difficult to restore any of the detox pathways. It's very difficult to restore methylation. It's very difficult to drive down the inflammation, which is our number 4, is cellular inflammation.
So on the energy front, in order to fix that, fixing membranes helps. And then you take things like PQQ, CoQ10.
So I built a lot of products that have all those things in it, right? Because back when I was doing it, I didn't have one product. I was putting things together, right? I was experimenting with PQQ. I was experimenting with, all these things that worked in fact, the mitochondria, right? And listen, when I was getting well, I didn't have a Dave Asprey telling me about the benefits of red light. I didn't have it, right? And again, I got well without it, but my gosh, I think to myself, how much easier could it have been? Because that's a big problem, is getting people's cell energy enough up that where they can actually start to heal.
It's shocking what happens even just 10 minutes that people with chronic pain, which is ultimately there's a mitochondrial issue there. You put red light on them and magically their pain goes down a lot. And then you give them some charcoal, which is a toxin binder. And the next day they're like, oh, it doesn't hurt. Like, who would have thought?
Yeah.
Okay. So we get our energy up with red light, with some supplements and all that. And there's many ways. I mean, we've both written books about that one. So what's after that is methylation.
Yeah, no, that R4 is just, we kind of hit on this, but you have to reduce the inflammation of the cell. This is where a lot of my diet strategies play. And of course, I've developed a lot of products around cellular inflammation. Right. And I talked about when your membranes are inflamed, your hormones don't work, you can't get the boost. So we kind of already talked about the damaging effects of inflammation. My diet strategies are very different than most people. Everyone looks for the perfect diet. And I said, the perfect diet is oftentimes the change of diet. I believe people stay low carb too long.
Yes.
But I love low carb.
Agreed.
I believe people stay in keto too long.
Yes.
Well, I love keto.
Amen.
I believe people stay in carnivore too long.
Yes.
It's so but I love carnivore. Right? So, and I believe people can be plant-based too long.
Well, it's like more than 3 days.
Yeah. So you and I, we tend towards the other side. But the point is, if you look at every healthy culture that ever existed on the planet, they were forced to change their diet, whether it be animals, foods, this, that. I mean, so many reasons, just season change. But fact is that today we don't have to do that, but it's a mistake because diet change can actually act in that hormetic stress where it stresses the microbiome and then it forces diversity, meaning it forces the microbiome to make different. When you go from a keto diet, or let's be more extreme, a plant-based diet into a keto diet. Imagine the bacteria change to break down these foods versus these foods. Well, it's pretty vast. So the more diet changes you have, the more bacteria you are forced to make, and they start to create diversity. So the number one way, and by the way, most people know this, diversity is the king, meaning the healthy people have a lot of different bacterias, et cetera, in their gut. They will absolutely have better immunity, better brain health, right? So diversity rules.
I disagree.
Tell me.
Well, it has to be diversity of the good guys because you can have diversity that includes all the crap.
But if you have bad guys, you don't have diversity.
Not necessarily.
They take over. They monoculture.
You can have diverse bad guys. In fact, a lot of people have 20 different bad bacteria in their guts,
but 20 is not diversity, though. I mean, we're talking thousands.
I mean, 20 different types of. So I'm just saying.
So usually what we see is when people have 20 bad guys, it drops the population so much so that their diversity looks horrible.
That makes good
Does that make more sense? Meaning, anytime you see a lot of bad guys, you see horrible diversity. It's because it's like mold. It's called amplified mold.
Right.
If you have Stachybotrys, you go, what happened to all these other normal bacteria in the home? This guy killed them all.
Correct.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I gotcha.
Okay.
All right.
I love the challenge though. But anyway, so because I love that. Matter of fact, I'm the guy who'd be like, wow, I didn't know that. I'm actually wrong. I'm good with that. So
we're both learning from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. But anyway, so the diversity, right? But diet change creates that diversity that we need. And it does other things. It actually, when you change your diet, it creates a hormone optimization, literally.
I believe in seasonal change. Our bacteria was never evolved to say on Monday I had Mexican, Tuesday I had Thai, Wednesday I had Ukrainian. It seems like eating random food all the time is not what our things want.
Yeah, I mean, this seasonal change is what we see, right?
Okay,
yeah,
right.
That's what we see. There is, in part of my feast famine cycling, it's different diet change though, because I agree with what you're saying. But feast famine cycling. What type of diet change is this? Let me use low carb as an example. Okay. But this could also be used for why people are intermittent fasting too much.
Oh,
right.
Totally. This is a big problem.
It's a big problem. We'll talk about it. It's a fun topic. So I've taught correct fasting for years, and I never thought that I'd be here today saying, people are fasting too much. Fasting can be very bad.
Finally.
Fasting is a stress,
fasting.
Yeah. So anyways, but okay. So people in low carb too long. And this happened, right? So Joe Mercola came to me. We were at a cancer thing, and he said, Doc, he said, man, I feel like I'm down to 10 grams of carbs a day, but I'm getting weaker in the gym, and I think I'm getting even fatter. I said, oh yeah, that's because your body's using its muscle because you need to increase your carbs.
He overdoes it to the extreme.
Yeah, now he's the extreme the other way. But anyway.
Yeah, now he's like drinking sugar or something.
But anyway, okay, so I said, just listen, add in 2 feast days a week where you eat good, healthy carbs, right? And transform, right? So
I tell people, eat the pancakes, low toxin or whatever, on Saturdays. If you're fasting, you have to do that.
You have to do that.
Okay, good. So we're aligned. Here's
the analogy, right? So the body will always eventually think it's starving, right? Because it's going, okay, if this is fat, this is the only thing we're burning, able to burn, I'm going to hold on to it. And the metabolism will continue to drop. Bodybuilders figured this out a long time ago, right? They would carb load before competition and come in ripped. So I challenge people, add a feast day where you increase your carbs and watch what happens. 2 days later, your ketones are going to go through the roof, which they always do, because your body then leaves your muscle alone. It says, we have all this fuel now. You're not starving, and I'm going to burn your fat now. So the analogy is, if you have a cabin in the middle of Alaska, right, and you have a certain amount of wood that gets you through the winter, right? This winter is really bad winter. It's a harsh winter, and you're going through your wood way faster. What are you going to do, Dave? You're going to burn more wood or burn less?
You're going to have to conserve.
That's right, because you want to survive the winter.
Yep.
Just like your body wants to survive. First thing, have to survive, right? So you're going to burn less. That's lowering your metabolism, meaning instead of being 70 in your house in the winter, you're going to go to 60, and you're going to say, but I'm good with it because I'm going to live and I'm going to make it through. So I'm burning half the amount of wood. Think of that wood as your fat. But a friend comes over. I say, Dave, oh my gosh, why don't you tell me? I have so much. Let me bring you some. And I bring you a bunch more wood. What are you going to do?
You're going to warm up the house.
That's right. That's the feast, man. That's what the feast does. Now Dave says, I have plenty of wood now, so I'm going to burn more. And you fire up fire up the engine. And that's what your body does on feast days. So we have all these people that are low carb too long, intermittent fasting too much, and their body is literally starving, and it goes into a survival mode, and they wonder why they don't have enough cellular energy, and they wonder why they're gaining fat and losing muscle.
This problem, the Bulletproof Diet was the first modern intermittent fasting book, as far as I'm aware. And like 3 books later, I wrote Fast This Way, my second book on fasting, because everybody started over fasting. Like it's a scalpel, and you don't need to use a scalpel for everything in your home. You'll get holes in your couch. It doesn't work.
Fasting's a stress.
Yeah.
Okay. So if your body adapts, it's awesome. But here's the other thing too. So people jump into a water fast. I love water fasting because I fast a lot, but most people today metabolically, they can't even handle a water fast. Their body goes after the muscle right away, and it doesn't bounce out of it because they're so broken in their mitochondria, right? And that's where you use fat for energy. But, so some people would be better off starting with partial fasting and then, later. But the point is that people are just fasting because they hear people do it. And sometimes they feel better just because they're taking away foods that were inflaming them.
They're not eating garbage.
And oftentimes what works, people get locked into. What diet works, they get locked into. What fasting, they get locked into.
Okay.
So, yeah, these are good topics because people are confused on these subjects.
There's one toxin you didn't mention, and I've come over the past maybe 5 years to think that I wrote about it at the beginning of the Bulletproof Diet book, but I think I under index on how important it is, and it's oxalate.
Well, I mean, oxalates, they're plant toxins. Lectins are plant toxins, right? Now,
Very different types of
we
toxins.
might disagree on this, right? But I believe plant toxins can be very bad, but they can also be good hormetically.
Depending on the dose, right?
So depending on the dose. That's exactly right. Depending on the dose. So the fact is that when you have leaky gut, the dose lowers dramatically on what you can tolerate.
Leaky gut, though.
Well, they can. It's in higher doses, right? So again, that's why I said I showed people, okay, in keto, too long is bad, but these plant-based diets that are loaded up with oxalates, that's the dose that can actually drive inflammation.
That trashed me when I was a vegan. But then, I look at what would happen like on a feast day back in the Bulletproof Diet. I'm like, okay, I'll have some kind of dessert made with almond flour, and I'll have a bunch of sweet potatoes, and I'll have some raspberries, right? Even though I cut out spinach and kale, I was still getting too much oxalate because we can handle about 200 milligrams a day, and I was probably getting a gram. And it forms those razor sharp crystals.
Yeah, they're a little spiky.
Yeah, and they literally cut the membrane. And I know that I was getting too much because when I was eating a lot of raspberries, I ended up going to the urologist because I had to pee like 25 times a day. And so many women are eating so many oxalates in their health foods, even on low carb diets.
Well, the worst yet, they're juicing kale or, they're juicing it all up and then putting it down and there's no protectors.
It just shreds the gut and then they get UTIs.
If you eat some oxalates with meats and different things, you have protectors there. So the dose.
Particularly with calcium.
And exactly. And with other foods that protect you from it. Again, it's not what you think.
I guess that there's an upper limit, and a lot of people are crossing over the upper limit, I would say, without knowing it. And 80% of people at autopsy have calcium oxalate crystals in their thyroid. Like it is, I'm starting to believe, foundational for a lot of the disease.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it is because the amount of massive gut inflammation. And we know when someone's gut's leaky and open, that amount going into their bloodstream becomes even more normal. So again, their limit gets way lower, and then they're still eating this limit.
There's leaky gut. Dysbiosis means the small amount of bacteria, not very much in humans, can break it down. And then toxic mold drives oxalate development inside your metabolism. Too much collagen above about 20 grams a day drives it. Too much glycine drives it. So we get some from our metabolic processes, a bunch from our diet, and we now have the studies that show it directly damages mitochondrial membranes and cell membranes. So I'm like, if you have chronic muscle pain, joints hurt, and you have to pee all the time, you're getting chronic UTIs, I like to look at oxalate in the diet and lower it, but not eliminate it.
Especially if someone already knows they have leaky gut and they're already challenged.
Yeah.
I mean, when they take it away, they feel better, right? They do, right? I mean, it's like I said, lectins. I can make an argument for why lectins are really important for our microbiome, but if your gut's wide open, you take lectins away, you go, I feel better. My digestion is a little bit better, right? Because, there are things that we should be able to ingest in the right amounts, normal amounts, we'll say, whatever that is.
It may be somewhat genetic, though. It seems like the nightshade thing really is a genetic.
Yeah, but Dave, I wonder if people had nightshade problems in the 1920s. I would argue.
I think they did. There was arthritis.
Really? Okay.
There was arthritis
I don't
back
know.
then.
I don't know the answer to that, but I would argue probably not. You answer your.
Well, I mean,
so.
we had arthritis was documented forever, and the reason I think it's so genetic. My kids eat real similar diets, and one of them has the genes, and I found out if I eat nightshades, the arthritis that I was diagnosed with when I was 14 comes back in one day, right? And it just causes systemic inflammation, brain fog, all that stuff. And my gut's pretty healthy. One of my kids has this.
You definitely have a pathway that was either damaged or, to your point, epigenetically triggered.
Yeah.
And you're not able to break it down.
So one kid a few bites of potatoes, neck hurts, all the same stuff that I dealt with for so long. Other kid eats it all day long.
So either way, like that three-legged stool, that gene got triggered.
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Was it triggered from your mother? Maybe. Or was it triggered in you? Probably. And now it's in your son.
Exactly. And I think both my parents have that. But it's fascinating, and we may not ever know for sure. And the moral of the story here is, if you eat something and it consistently causes problems and you fix your gut, it may not be a food that's highly compatible for you, and that's okay. But it'd be nice if you could eat it, right? So it's cool to hear you say not all lectins are bad, because I don't believe that either. If they don't affect you, then you want to eat them, and maybe you just want a little bite because it's triggering change in your gut bacteria, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's like you said, everyone's going after lectins as if they're bad, but again, the premise of hormesis, stress can be good.
Yeah,
they're plant toxins, they're stressors to your microbiome, but the fact is that can be good. But arguably, too much stress, too much oxalates, too much lectins will be very bad for you, because you won't adapt, especially if you're already challenged in your gut. You're not going to adapt to a small amount of those plant toxins. Okay. I can handle a lot more than when I was sick. When I was sick, I couldn't handle gluten. I can eat gluten now, right? It's like, because my body's dealing with it. But I can overload.
Do you eat American gluten?
Well, I can eat it, but do I want to eat it? No, I eat Italian gluten.
Yeah.
Do I want to eat it? But I can't. No, but you understand.
Not Italian. Don't do that. Do you know what's going on?
Is it 00? I eat it all the time.
There's a shortage of Italian gluten. They're shipping American gluten to Italy. They're grinding it up.
Of course. Just like the olive oil.
But French gluten is safe. I eat French. I make my own sourdoughs from French white flour, and 1 teaspoon of American flour trashes.
By the way, they did the same thing with olive oil. Yeah. They send the bad olive oil to the U.S., so you have to know your olive oil. Yeah. To your point, you have to even know your Italian flours now. But it is a different gluten. It's a different wheat, obviously. And
all right.
But my point there is, I can eat American gluten, and I have no reaction.
Even with the glyphosate?
I'm organic. I don't eat glyphosate. But my point is I used to react. That was the point I was making.
I don't feel confident in finding American gluten, so I don't really want to test myself. That doesn't have glyphosate, but the fact that I can eat some sourdough, which is well fermented, has, like, holy crap! I would have told you there's no chance I could ever touch gluten again. But I've also healed. Like we're talking.
Yeah,
about.
So I was just gonna say.
It doesn't seem to be making me fat.
No.
Okay. There's something about detox that you're one of the only people who will really talk about this. What's the role of emotional trauma with toxins, and even spiritual awakening? What role do toxins play in those?
When I was sick, it was very hard for me to think positively. Right. Yeah. I mean, so when people say, just think positive, I guess you've never been sick, because, it's really hard to get your head around it.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. And, so it gives you a lot of sympathy and empathy for people. And, also spiritually, you get massively disconnected. Listen, my wife, this is a true story. I mean, her crying out for an answer for our family, for me. Yeah. I had 2 young boys at the time, 5 kids now. It was hard, right? And she literally on her knees, probably many times, this particular time, God spoke to her heart that not only is he going to get me well, but I'm going to take an answer to the world. A message to the world was her exact quote.
Wow.
And when she would tell me that, I didn't want to hear it, Dave. I didn't, because my exact words to her were, I can't even get myself well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my negativity. And honestly, I wanted to die. I did. I wasn't planning suicide, although I thought about it, because for me, death was far less scary than living my life like I was. That was my reality at that point.
I think you just gave a gift to a lot of people with mold and these illnesses. Everything feels impossible because it's so big, and your mitochondria are not making energy. Yeah. So it is big because you just don't have it. My experience is that mitochondria are the antennas that make life force, but they also allow you to connect spiritually. Like they're the interface to the spiritual reality. Yeah. And when they're broken, you can't connect to the spiritual source. It's hard to connect to other people. And it sucks on a level that people who have been really sick may not understand.
I mean, I was trying to drive my wife away, I think, out of guilt, out of my own, I don't know. But, and looking back, but she hung in there, man, and here I am today because what she said is right, or God through her was right. I'm taking a message to the world, pain to purpose, to promise. That's the that was the promise, by the way. So pain to purpose to promise. I closed that loop of why I've added the pain to purpose to the promise.
Do people give you a hard time about bringing God into medicine?
Yeah, I'm sure. But it's who I am. I'm meaning like, it's like
you don't like it? Go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. I can't not be it because that's just that he's everything to me, and that's me. And again, I'm so glad I live in a country that I can be me and you can be you and he can be he and she could be he, her. And it's like, but I'm me. So I always say, thank you for allowing me to be me.
There you go. It's been an interesting shift. In Silicon Valley, during my career there, if you brought up any kind of spirituality, or your Christianity, which is the most shunned type, you'd almost get excommunicated from the tech community, right? Because you weren't logical. And where things are in Silicon Valley today is actually there's a rise in Christianity.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's actually happening in a very interesting way. I think Peter Thiel has maybe played a meaningful role in that. Who's a very interesting human being. He's the first guy to offer to fund Bulletproof back when I ran Bulletproof.
Oh wow!
I said, I'll put $500,000 in if you'll build a coffee shop by my office or my home. And I said, Peter, there's no foot traffic by your office or your home, so that would be a bad investment. And I didn't take the money. But it was really cool. And just watched him say, well, this is what I believe. He's also gay, right? So he's like, I'm just going to be me.
Yeah.
Right. And I respect the hell out of that. And so seeing the shift where people are saying there is a role for spirituality in medicine and in healing. And if you don't have purpose and connection, you might just hold on to that lead and mercury and mold toxin way harder. And is there evidence for that?
Well, there is, because, the emotions, the spirit, the emotion, the body all work together, right? And we all have trapped emotions. Same place in the cell, at the cell level, that affects our DNA. Listen, Bruce Lipton, we both read his book, right? Yeah. But wasn't he the first to bring science to it?
You met him?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's such a great guy.
Oh, my gosh. But he was like the first to make it popular, the science around. Wait a minute. Okay, I told you, everyone, that the membrane, on the cell membrane, are these receptors to our hormones. That's pretty easy to understand, right? It's like, okay, they have to dock, that's it. But what he showed was that membrane and those receptors, integral membrane proteins, your thoughts too, in a wavelength, come in and they attach to that receptor, and then get the message goes in the cell. And, that then will tell your cells, to produce certain proteins.
Yeah.
And then those proteins are who we are and who we become. So your thoughts become who we are, right? For better or for worse, right? That's science. So the fact is that when our thoughts are negative, that's trapped in those cells, just like toxins, and we become that. Right. So you can't separate it.
Without the biology of belief, his big book, I don't think there would be biohacking. It was really like, the environment really provably does change our biology.
For better or for worse.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't know this about Bruce Lipton. He's a hardcore cell biologist. He's a membrane guy. He was one of the first guys to clone cells in a lab. But he's not a hippy dippy guy, which some people would think. He's as scientific as he gets. He just did what he saw in the lab and wrote the book and started the whole movement there on epigenetics.
What book was this in? This is a story.
The Biology of Belief.
No, this story. This is true, right? So here's the story.
I don't think his book has the cell biologist. I interviewed him and he told me about it. That's why.
So they took a Japanese man from World War II. My dad was in World War II, so a lot of traumas, right?
God, yeah.
So they took him and they showed him scenes of World War II. Over there in the room, they were under the microscope. They were watching his cells.
Wow.
And they would write down when the cells would react in a violent or manner, visibly react. They would mark the time, 1:28, 220, whatever.
Cells out of the guy's body.
Out of the guy's body.
Yeah.
Okay. And they would document it. And it was every time the scenes they could see, and it would correlate. So they did something else. They took them 50 miles away.
They're quantumly entangled. Doesn't matter how far.
And it still happened. So, so if that doesn't get you to understand, that connection.
That sounds like that might be one of the heart math books.
That was my question to you. I thought,
It's, I don't remember the Japanese guy.
I hate saying the story without giving credit when I read it. I forget.
And it's what it means. And certainly my new book, Heavily Meditated, it's like, what is the process for removing trauma all the way down to the subcellular level so that your entire being becomes non-reactive to something that was formerly a trauma? And that's been a lot of my last 20 years personally. And there's a neuroscience way of measuring it. And a kind of an 8-step process.
Yeah.
What's your favorite way of removing emotional trauma?
Oh boy. I mean, and my thing is my prayer time. That's my meditation time. Start every morning. And in that is gratitude.
It's right at the core.
Vitamin G, man. I mean, it is, that's everything. It anchors me to who I am, who God created me to be and what for. And I'm just I have so much gratitude around it, but I do. It's part of my day. I'm so great today. Started it the same way as I do every day.
Gratitude's been a part of the biohacking movement for a long time. And where I am today is you need to take the right supplements in the right order. So I start with vitamin G, and then you got to take vitamin F right away afterwards. And so vitamin G is gratitude. Vitamin F is forgiveness. So gratitude opens that state that allows you to do forgiveness, which is a process of being non-reactive to trauma. It has nothing to do with telling someone you forgive them or saying that it's what they did was it's just about it no longer left a mark. It's like cleaning yourself up, which is a form of detoxing. And I have had multiple people tell me with their patients, they do EMDR, they do emotional release work, they do trauma work, and suddenly the metals come out in their pee. But they hold on to the metals as long as they hold on to the toxins. Do you see that?
Because if they're both stored in the cell, that means that they both affect your detox pathways. So therefore, the toxins then are affected.
Correct.
Yeah, you see, so you can't separate it. Right? And I used to always say to people when I took very challenging cases on, I got very good at knowing when people had a lot of their toxin traumas, right? Toxic traumas. And I wouldn't take them on because I knew that those are the ones I couldn't help. And not that they can't be helped.
They're patients who sue you too.
Absolutely. and it's not that they can't be helped. I always would say, I'm just not the expert there. Yeah. And I'm still not the expert there. So I know my limitations.
Refer them out.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. In a very good way. I'd say, go read this, because I don't want to add one more layer of the toxic trauma they have. But I also don't want to take their money if I can't help them or think they can't help them. And people that had a lot of stored up, toxic trauma where that's not my expertise. It's just not.
Well, Dan, I very much respect that take. And I respect the way you just stand up for being yourself. And you've trained a lot of physicians.
Long time.
In this new way of thinking, cell membrane centric, toxin centric, the frameworks you're using. They're useful for doctors. They're also useful for people who just are sick and tired of being sick.
Yeah.
So thanks for just putting it out there, the books you write, the courses you teach. I appreciate you coming out as well.
Well, I appreciate what you've done too, because you put some great stuff on the map, man. So thank you as well. Honored to be here.
If you liked today's episode, you know what to do. You should check out Dan Pompa's work. He's got so much cool stuff. And hey, check out Bruce Lipton too while we're at it. He's OG.
If you enjoyed this episode with Dr. Pompa and would like to get help through his new healing system built exclusively for the Human Upgrade listeners, visit davetestkit.com and use code 10OFF for 10% off.
See you next time on the Human Upgrade Podcast.